Welcome to the CEN show, the platform where we learn from the world community. I'm your host, Rashaki Maskani. On the panel this evening, we have Brother Rahh, Brother Mshinda, and Professor Rahh. We have a group as our guest this evening, and it's the Level Set crew. We have a host, Larry Fields, Dr. Charles Alexander, and the Mike Jones, political columnist. And this evening, they're going to give us a little taste of what they do on Saturdays. And we're going to kind of mix that with what we do here on the CEN show in Conscious Corner. So I'm going to turn it over to the host for this evening, Brother Larry Fields. And Brother Larry Fields, I'm going to be mixing in with you sometime. So go for it, brother. Welcome the Level Set crew.
Well, thank you. And I hope that your participation is often this evening. I am thankful to be here this evening, and I speak for all of the Level Set, and of course we'll be able to hear from each of them in their own regard tonight. But we are here this evening to do as we do most weekends, and that's learn from the feet of Mike Jones, the Mike Jones as we call him. And we are privileged and honored to be able to essentially reference the knowledge that he has accumulated by study and by actual work. So I will not belabor the point, and I will introduce, of course, Mr. Mike Jones. We call him the Mike Jones because he is the Mike Jones. And he's one of a kind, and this man is uniquely qualified, and his analysis are, chef's kiss quality at all times. So, Mr. Jones, please go into your bio a bit if you have, the pleasure to do so, sir.
Well, basically, short strokes. I spent my working career fundamentally in politics and government, from the city council, the board of aldermen of St. Louis, running the housing authority, and all that happened in the 80s and the 90s. I was chief of staff and deputy mayor for development for the second Black mayor in St. Louis, and then became senior policy advisor for the first Black county executive in St. Louis County. And in between there, I also spent time on the State Board of Education. So with a couple forays into not-for-profit and then corporate work for about 4 years with Anheuser-Busch, fundamentally my whole working life was spent in government, and been retired for the last 10 years. And what has taken up although I end up doing part-time kind of consulting advice for people who still work full-time in government. But the things that I've really enjoyed since retirement is two things. I write a column in the St. Louis America regularly, and I get a chance to be a member of Level Set. So that's at the top of what has been great about retiring and not working.
That is, wow, that's awesome. And, as I told you before, this is
TV disconnected. Ready to connect. AUX audio.
This is essentially one of the bedrocks of our community. And Dr. Alexander, if you will, I will turn over the actual show to you at this point, and let's engage with and learn once again from the Mike Jones.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone, and thanks again, Attorney Fields. Mike, I would in this moment where we're in the midst of this current administration. We spent a considerable amount of time talking about about our federal government and the election. And so, let's start there. On more than one occasion, you stated that the outcome of the election would be determined by white women. So, kind of want to start there and revisit, your thoughts on that.
Okay, thanks, Charles. What I meant by that, and that's kind of a really good place to start, is that the electoral reality of America is that the majority of white people have voted Republican since 1968. No matter who was running, white America, the majority of white America votes Republican. And they vote Republican independent of the state of the economy, the state of the world. The country could be at war, could be at peace. It didn't matter. That's the way they vote. And the variable in the election I thought could possibly be, I wasn't predicting this, but given the Supreme Court ruling, Jackson, that basically wiped out women's reproductive rights in their agency to decide that, and the overreach of MAGA Republican Party throughout the country on this issue, one could infer, because that's all it was an inference, that white women may decide to vote their personal interests. And the reason I say personal interests is because statistically, 1 in 3 births don't go to term. So that the procedures that are being outlawed fundamentally are necessary just in terms of maintaining the health and life of women who are pregnant, whose pregnancies don't end with birth of a child. And that's 1/3 of the women who get pregnant in any given year. And one could speculate that might change the trajectory of how white women vote. But that happened not to be the case. So an inference that a deduction I would draw from that larger scale is that fundamentally that being white and maintaining white men in power and the privilege of whiteness in America was a greater existential issue than the health of women that might be in danger as a result of pregnancies that don't go to term. So there you have it. They did what they've always done, independent of whatever the circumstances suggest might be different. And they did it again, and here we are.
So thank you for that. And so with that in mind, like, where do we go from here? What is it that we are to do in this moment of time?
I think the first thing, we ought to take a deep breath and then put some perspective on the point that you raised in this moment in time. And we have the propensity of looking at these situations like this is something unique. It just happened to us. We were talking earlier, and we should look at this as this moment. We should look at this as a thing. This happens in America throughout our history here, and this happens to be the moment of this thing. In a lot of ways, you could call the Trump MAGA reaction and what they are doing is 21st century equivalent of post-Reconstruction, because we've kind of talked about this, and Reconstruction actually worked. it was successful. And that is why the reaction of Southern whites and the indifference of Northern whites to what they were doing. But that's why that happened, was to roll back that progress that recently emancipated, enslaved Black folks were achieving. And my view of America in the 20th century, the second half of the 20th century, is America was changing, is changing, but hasn't changed. And if you took the last 50 years, you would have to say, not so much structurally, but on the margin, things had changed. The country wasn't less racist, but it was more liberal, culturally liberal. And what you see right now is what I call the average white man's reaction to the notion of losing that privilege and that standing. And so that's where, to me, this comes from. So I'm not surprised. I would say I wouldn't have predicted a specific thing, but the reaction is almost to be expected, because there's never been a moment in America where we've made progress that we haven't been confronted with a reaction from white America to turn back the clock. So while if you look at white America vis-a-vis us, I can put them in three buckets. I think there's always been a progressive, justice-oriented white population. Think of the Quakers found in Pennsylvania, the white Americans that helped support and participated with the Underground Railroad. Our story in America is replete with the blood of white folks who have given the last full measure, just like we have. So that's there. But that ain't all white folks. So we've always had what I would say is almost genetically predisposed group of white Americans that fundamentally are racist and oppressive oriented. That's their predisposition, particularly if you're not white, and particularly if you're Black. And then the third group is just indifferent. Okay, I mean, they're not, they don't belong to the Klan, but they ain't marching with Dr. King, and they really don't care one way or the other. As long, and if you ask them, they probably say, I'm against racism, but I don't want to be inconvenienced by justice. So, but when you take the indifferent with the malevolent, you get the majority of white Americans, and that's kind of the America we have always been in, and we should understand that. And I think we have forgotten that over time. And a statistic I ran into in the last month or so kind of explains it for me, that 87% of Black America was born after 1965. And so that means that there's a complete disconnect from the majority of Black people in America from our lived historical experience. The one thing, if you're there's a couple of us on this podcast right now. Your Black experience was part of the same Black experience of everybody before you. Now, obviously, we weren't all enslaved, but literally, I saw Professor Rahh, I saw Malcolm murdered. I saw Dr. King murdered. I'm a boy when Emmett Till is murdered. You saw I'm a live witness to the Edmund Pettus Bridge. So all these things we talk about, or the bombing in Birmingham. So all these things that we talk about is part of my lived experience. It's part of Brother Rah's lived experience. But if you're 40 years old, it is hard for you, given the peripheral social changes, it's real hard for you to internalize that. Somebody can tell you about it, they can explain it to you, you understand all the words you say, but it's difficult for that to find some emotional place to resonate because it's so alien to your experience. It's like somebody talking to me about World War II or the Great Depression. I heard everything you said, but my imagination doesn't go that deep. There's nothing in my experience that lets me truly understand what it must have been like to grow up in the Depression or to be alive during World War II and that trauma. So I think our biggest challenge is, for me, what I see is we got the majority of us that are not necessarily built for this moment. That being in a state of shock or surprise about America producing a president like Donald Trump could make them ask the question, what happened, what went wrong? And for me, I would say nothing went wrong. This was always probably going to happen. You just didn't know when, and you didn't know who it would be. But you shouldn't be surprised if you're Black in America that there's a white reaction to Black progress, and this is what it looks like now, but it looks like something else then. But it's part of our experience in America, and we should always be cognizant of that and organize ourselves accordingly. And now I think we're struggling with what do you do?
And fundamentally, we know that we need to do what?
I think we first, for me, and I think this is where it starts, Charles. I think we have to recognize and decide who we are in America. And one of the things, and I like this, Professor Rahh and I kind of contemporaries. At some point, I'd like for him to weigh in on this. I think we've always been of two minds, that historically our struggle in America has been to be included in America, to be treated like American citizens, for us to be treated to be included and treated equitably. For me, what separated the 60s, the movement, from our history is, it was not the first time, because it's always been a peripheral sentiment, but for the first time that the dominant sentiment in a large majority of Black America, particularly young Black America, well, we don't want to be included. Y'all can keep this mess that y'all call America, and fundamentally, we find our identity someplace else. So you see yourself in solidarity with the Vietnamese who fight in American imperialism. Okay, you start to see yourself in solidarity with people of color throughout the world who are struggling to emancipate themselves, and you actually see America as the major danger to people in the world, and that the American monster is really the problem. So to me, that's not a new idea, but I don't believe it ever historically ever had the level of currency that it had back in the 60s when Brother Rahh and I were younger. And that sentiment kind of informed a whole generation and a half of Black politicians. So when you see us moving from, I'll call it social protest to structural politics, people were coming into that arena with that mindset, and that made for a much more aggressive Black politician, particularly in the 70s and maybe early 80s. And then it changed because basically, and even Black politicians before that time, post-World War II, were all products of some kind of social protest movement, the civil rights movement, Black Power, Black student movement. So you came into the political arena as a change agent and kind of the tip of the spear for whatever the agenda of Black people were. I think there was no movement behind us, so the next generation or the next wave of Black politicians didn't get incubated in that environment, and they kind of come into the arena with what I call as entrepreneurial politicians. Not that they're not Black, but they're operating out their own experience and necessarily not tied to any larger agenda of the Black community. And to me, the one example that I kind of see in looking at stuff now is Black political ambition versus Black power. And while we have more Black elected officials in both raw numbers and at higher levels than we've ever had before, I would say we're less impactful and less influential, less powerful in that space than we've ever been. And for me, it's tied to how that next generation, and the emerging generations coming after them, how they were curated versus how me and folks older than me happen to be curated. Larry is an attorney and is extraordinarily well informed about the history of Black attorneys in the struggle of Black people. You would probably hit the Powerball lottery before you could find a Black lawyer who would do what Thurgood Marshall did. And I'll bet money on that. And so these cultural changes have really changed our idea of where we are in America, who we are, and we got a whole lot of us now just don't know. I mean, they can read a book and they can listen to a podcast, but in terms of really being connected to what that means, we've never been in quite this situation.
So it sounds like you're saying, first and foremost, we need to double down on us.
I would say so.
Okay. Got it.
Dr. Charles.
But go ahead.
Dr. Charles, you want Rahh to weigh in on that?
Yes, I was about to engage Baba Rahh. So Baba Rahh, given Mike Jones' response and his positing of urgence and you know, what are your thoughts on that dynamic and how that has impacted you know, our community and our response to, you know, to those social and political stressors that we see today?
Yeah, again, hello everyone. I appreciate what's been asked, if I understand correctly. You know, the struggle is not over. I mean, we've had victories and we've had setbacks. We've had spontaneous responses to police killings and discrimination and things of that nature, and we've had organizations that have dedicated their mission to make change for the interests of African American people. You have to understand, this is a long, protracted struggle. It took us hundreds of years to get out of the Holocaust of enslavement. And so, but you got to look at the positive aspect to a certain degree. I mean, I agree with Dean Jones and Alderman Jones, and from the standpoint of that, there's been a lack of a lull in certain aspects of the movement, and leadership. Judas Goats, you know, some call them poverty pimps or black movement pimps that just use the movement to hustle, versus sincere people that emerge. The system spends billions of dollars to suppress us, not just physically, but mentally and culturally, to develop an apparatus that will meet the masses. And sometimes, you know, like Mr. Jones was saying, you know, education is very important, but education begins at home. Many of our parents didn't teach us about what was going on in the South, East, West, as far as oppression. They didn't want us to be subject to brutality if we spoke out, or they talked about their experiences. Today's youth think that everything that they are participating in was already here. Nobody struggled for it. And that's the importance of learning the history of why you are able to go and do certain things. But, you know, Martin Luther King, the civil rights movements was a struggle against laws and policies. And the Black Power movement was a struggle for humanity, as Malcolm was saying. You know, and to get your humanity, you rely on the masses of the people. When you fighting laws, you try to go to court, you sue, you do this, you do that. You point out the flaws in the laws and the contradictions to the Constitution, and you have a different, you know, that's your thing. It never entailed developing a Black Power movement. It just developed a Black Christian movement for integration and for equality. That's what the civil rights was about. But the Black Power was about empowering yourselves, and don't look at yourself as a victim. A lot of people like to start Black history and they say, well, Black history is American history. Yeah, it's a part of American history. But Black history goes all the way back to prehistoric days, ancient history, and recent history, and then recent history. There are 4 levels of that. And most people, as Carter G. Woodson wrote in his 1930 book, The Miseducation of the Negro, a lot of people focused on white people educating us, but we need more African Americans to educate us in a way in which they can receive the knowledge as trustworthy and as authentic, and not only just discuss what they have done to suppress our freedoms and our rights to vote and to freedoms to be ourselves culturally. We have to also look at the aspect of we still overcome all those barriers. That's a remarkable achievement to not have weapons, military force other than deacons, and the Panther parties and various organizations that focused on defense. But as far as having an army, you had the Black Liberation Army and things of this nature, but they were not sustainable because they weren't getting the finances. They had to rob banks and armored trucks to get their money. And see, you got to look at, well, you don't got to, but I look at it as irregardless of what people say, that we're still struggling. There are many organizations out there struggling all over, and we've had since '65, we've had a number of street rebellions, not just with George Floyd or Michael Brown. Over there was a thing in Illinois, where the fire department, police all went home to protect their families because of uprising. A lot of the media don't cover our successes. They make you feel like you're hopeless. And then they crack back on your leaders. The gains that we have gotten, as Mike has brought out, they change. And he, as he was giving the narrative about the white women and white people, they have multiple interests, but their number one interest is white supremacy. And that trumps birth, health issues, that trumps economic issues, that trumps political issues. All of it is about maintaining white supremacy. And that is not just feeling good because you're white, but controlling institutions. So they can blame it on institutions and policies that ensure that they stay in power and suppress any competition to challenge them or to change the white supremacy. And so that's how I saw that and still see it. But I think that when you look at our challenge for the young people, as Hakeem Mahadi Booty said, you never seen your kids to be educated by people that don't love them. And it's a difference between wanting power to revenge white people for what they've done than wanting power to uplift your people to a higher level of living and a higher level of consciousness and freedom to be themselves, to be able to be African, to be Black as a people. So Black History Month, like I said, they like to begin it in America, but it's not. It goes way back. But, it takes families and, we used to call them griots. They educated the community. They were responsible for the history of that community. Someone in each family have to take up, they had the influence, not the drunk uncle, not the narcotic brother who has vision, but one of stature, that's respected, and they have to be trained to respect what the teacher is saying. A lot of youth are trained, mom and dad, y'all old school. No, we are school. And the best way to understand anything is to know the history of that struggle and the achievements. I mean, look what Frederick Douglass did, look what Harry Tubman did, look what Mary Thune did, look what Martin Luther King Jr. did, look what Malcolm did, as far as educating, mobilizing and organizing and confronting the system. So, we have martyrs in our midst. Assassination is what they did to them, but sacrifice is what they did for us. And they knew that their lives were in danger. Even the student movement, they shot white people at Kent State, shot black people at Jackson State during the midst of the 60s. So many students didn't know they were putting their lives on the line, but they eventually found, be able to see it. And so it's you have to choose. It's one of the hardest things to do is to stay Black conscious and practice it, because the system is so overwhelming that it make you think you're not making no progress because they don't focus on your progress. They just focus on their power to stalemate your progress and focus on their power to demonstrate their power by imposing on others right before your eyes what they're doing, what they're doing today. But that's where I see it.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you. And so
Yeah.
I'm hearing. Go ahead, Mike.
Now, I just want to say, add a little caveat. One of the things I don't think we've done is had an appreciation for how difficult it is to do today, to do what Brother Rahh is talking about today. So when we were curating or educating Black children at historically, you were telling them and explaining to them what they were actually bearing witness to. I mean, you didn't have to go to a book that in the lived experience of those children historically, you were explaining America to them that they could see and they were experiencing and they can understand it. That's a lot tougher when you got Black millionaires and Black billionaires and there's a whole range, and when Barack Obama can be president of the United States, it takes a lot of sophistication to explain to somebody that to be the Black president of the United States, he'll never be your president. He just happens to be the president of the United States who's Black. But that won't change anything fundamentally about your relationship with and to America. And that's what I mean when I talk about when somebody was born. It really has to do with what their cognitive reality is. And then how do you explain to them what their cognitive reality means? It was a lot easier explaining it to me, okay? Because I'm looking at the same thing that they're looking at, and they could then tell me from a historical perspective how I got there. For somebody who was born in 1990, who's now 35 years old, I mean, they're good and grown. Their lived experience is just totally different. And you can sound like you're stuck in an era. So we need some different terminology. We need to create a different context so that you can kind of begin to explain this reality. Now, every dark cloud has a ray of sunshine in it. I think Donald Trump and his MAGA America white folks go teach a whole lot of Black folks what we're talking about now. That ain't the easiest way to learn it, but experience is a severe master, but sometimes people have no other. So we're getting ready to live through what we've all lived through, but the majority of us here today have never experienced that. And it sounds like ancient history, and I think it's about to become reality, current events, and not history.
So I think I'm hearing a few things. That first and foremost is not just the optics, it's the lived experience, right?
Right.
And I'm also hearing from our elders that white supremacy is, right? That's a thing. And the struggle is what has to exist in response, right? So we've had a historical propensity to resist, and despite the optics, the lived experience has to tell us at this moment that we're not quite as far ahead as what we thought. And for those of us who didn't know, we about to fuck around.
Find out.
That's about to happen, right? Now, but part of that requires that, again, we double down on us, that we have a responsibility for making this clear and for literally, decodifying this thing so that those of us in that post-65, 1965 space really understand what it is that we are seeing in spite of what we thought.
Yeah, Charles, I would say we're looking for a 21st century or 2025 equivalent of when your father or your uncle or somebody would say, get in the car. I want you to take a ride with me. I want to show you something, okay? Because at some point, people could show you better than they can tell you. And we've all had that experience. I want you to come with me today because you need to see something. And I don't know what that looks like today, but I know what it looked like then, and it didn't change that much from generation to generation. That's the other thing. We're complete because of technology and the rapid and radical changes in society and the economy and how people relate to each other consciously and unconsciously, figuring out how to transfer intergenerational knowledge is a major challenge.
And it is because of that. Somebody had a question?
Yeah. See, what we did prior to the 60s movement, you couldn't even apply for jobs. Now they put a note on your mark on your application, let you apply, go through the interview, and you still don't get hired. It's more scientific and technical. What I'm saying is racism has changed to be more technical, it's still oppression, because let me give you an example. We sometimes confuse individual achievement with mass achievement.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? And that'll confuse you. If no one can educate them with like what Mike was talking about, the statistics and the data and the information. I mean, we have to turn our homes and school and teachers into sacred teaching. Mystery system teaching. We have to talk in a way in which they understand, a language that they understand. And can you point out racism in the aerospace thing? Can you point out it? Well, statistically, you can, because the majority of people that's working in that field is white. You understand? Like it was the majority of people that own the cotton fields and the things were white. But it was different, as he was saying, because the system changed, but their goal is to stay in power. That's why they spend so much money on their military. And the military is not just armed forces, it's psychological warfare, it's spying, it's countering people's intelligence, and so you have to. It's very difficult to stay Black conscious and Black committed to your people, and Mike is right. Times have changed, and sometimes many of our parents don't have the education that it takes to educate their children, or the desire to educate them to what real environment that they're in. They keep thinking freedom is the choice between going to Taco Bell or McDonald's. and that's not freedom. You understand? Because both people who own the Taco Bell franchises and McDonald's are white. So you're still giving your money to them instead of Mom's Burger and a brother chili dog stand or lemonade stand. So a mindset is very important from a cultural standpoint of being able to understand you have to sometimes be clandestine because the more progress you make, the angry the system get, and the more it will assassinate, criminalize you, use IRS against you. And so a lot of people are intimidated. But the struggle continues irregardless of that. There's not been one president in this country that ever really helped us. You know, you can look at Johnson talking about the New Deal and all that and the anti-poverty program, but we still in poverty. So it really didn't help. You know, he only ran one term, then the next person come in and rolled it back, like what Trump's doing with certain issues today. So, you know, it's a very important that we who know more must teach more and educate more and give them a mission. But we have to be strategic in doing it. You know, it's not easy because you got Uncle Tom and his big money spying on each other and working for the system to derail our movement is big money. You
know. So another point that the two of you have made is that Black consciousness is intentional behavior.
You have to choose it. Yeah,
you got to choose it. You got to choose it. And so, kind of sticking with this theme of 1965, Mike, can you share with us a little bit about, give us a rough estimate about when you was born and like take us to 1965, and then I'll have some more questions. Once you give us that little bit of context.
That part is easy. I was born in 1949, so in 1965 I'm 16, so I'm still growing up. And no, I wasn't reading Mile in high school and none of that. I was really more concerned about a jump shot and some other things that that you normally are associated with when you're 15, 16 years old. However, my growing up happened, and to me, at a unique time in America, because by the time I become a teenager, America not only has gone through the civil rights movement, but is now emerging where you have urban America, white America called them riots, we call them rebellions, but you're actually starting to see physical reaction to white oppression, particularly police violence. And if I took the summers of my high school years from 63, 64 till I graduated in 67, every summer was, quote, hot, okay? So fundamentally, that was part of a general impatience with the historical approaches to trying to advance the causes of Black people. So if I think there was anything unique about my growing from an adolescence to adulthood, going in college and stuff, is that I can say that I won't say it was literally everybody, but the tenor and tone of Black youth was really a rejection of the whole idea of letting America consume or co-opt you. So that fundamentally, ultimately, what got me not interested in politics, what shaped me going into politics was I saw myself with more power and leverage, just from a personal standpoint, with more power and leverage inside of that than I would have in a white corporation or having a career that is more traditional. So when I look at the urban black politics of the 70s, let's say, because everybody in the 60s had to grow up. I mean, nobody is 22 or 25 and getting to be mayor of Chicago or Washington, D.C. But if you look at what a Coleman Young did in Detroit, what a Marion Barry did in D.C., what Maynard Jackson did in Atlanta, where you and Larry went to school, all of those brothers were shaped by all of this agitation and impatience. So when I look at what people call now diversity, equity, inclusion, what people call affirmative action or minority participation, I quit doing it, but I sometimes remind people that we have really messed that up. That those were not programs. That was the tax that black political power put on white commercial interests if they wanted black support. That fundamentally for their project, that you could even call it gangster if you want to, where it's your stuff, but it's gonna cost you something to get it if you got to come by us. Now we allowed ourselves to be co-opted by turning them into welfare programs. Like I told somebody, I once had a conversation with Maynard Jackson when I was on the board of Alderman. And I was curious as well as Purvis Jones. We were talking to him, and we wanted to know how he pulled off the airport thing. How did you do the airport thing? What was the system? What was the program? And he looked at us with a kind of blank stare. He said, "What program?" Yeah, what was the program? How did you do it? And the brother just looked at us and he said, "I was the program." And then, because I said so, okay? That if it was going to move, you couldn't move it without me, and I'm telling you what it costs to get me to move it. It ain't no more complicated than that. You don't need a program. I actually told people once, if I was a black mayor of a city, I wouldn't have a minority participation program, because I wouldn't put a number. I wouldn't limit myself at 25 or 30%. So if you think in terms of power, once you got it, how you want to use it, as opposed to figuring out how to accommodate the system. So that's one of the things that I saw change over my career, that going into it, we were the tip of the spear, black politics. It was a point of attack. This was not about accommodating the system. This was about, if you couldn't take it over, it was hijacking whatever we thought we could hijack to make a difference for black people. By the time I'm leaving, we saw for his hospital cotton, man. And we're asking white people for stuff we used to take. Now that's the difference.
Yes. And so in your formative years, what did that power look like? So again, like in the mid to latter 60s and then on into the 70s, what did black power look like in St. Louis?
Well, William Clay Sr. was the first black congressman from Missouri. He's a founding member of the Black Caucus. So he goes to Congress when I'm a freshman in college, 1968. and it's about 13 of them or 16 of them, and they literally formed the Black Caucus. But Black caucuses were being formed all over the place in state legislatures, et cetera. And what, and I'll just use St. Louis as my frame of reference. If you ask any white politician, a mayor, a governor, who wanted to get something done in St. Louis, but he needed political support to get it done, I would suggest in every room in St. Louis in that period of time, and really till he retired, but particularly in the 70s and the 80s, you would have heard a white boy have to say, have you talked to Bill? Have you talked to the congressman? I will bet you, I'll give you odds, $1 to $100, that today in St. Louis, there's not a white politician who thinks he has to ask permission. I guess if you wanted a cinematic example of what I'm talking about, it's in Hoodlum when Bumpy Johnson is running Harlem, and they talking about that. We said, well, you're gonna have to talk to Bumpy about that, because if you need Harlem, we don't do that, and we don't take up that kind of space anymore. And when we do have that leverage, it seems to operate on a more narrow personal level than seeing yourself as basically wearing the colors of the people that sent you into the room. So I would say, coming from that era, if that's where you're from, the notion of having political ambition that required white people would have been an alien concept. So nobody aspired to be the governor because you'd have to accommodate a whole lot of white interests, assuming you could get elected. So the questions you really have to ask yourself is, what is a black governor worth to you? Or would you be better off, and I'm speaking as a politician, or would you be better off? Well, there's two ways you can get to be like, we can have a brother or a sister as the governor or the mayor, but we need white folks to elect them. Now, in that case, what do we have to give them to get that? And how much do we have to give away? But if you flip the script and say, they can't be the mayor or the governor without us, then I get to charge them. In the first scenario, I got to pay. In the second scenario, I get to charge. So a black face in a white space is not necessarily the empowerment of black people. It depends on how you decide to play how you think the game is supposed to be played.
So it sounds like one of those things that you learn is that first and foremost, politics are local.
Yeah, it always starts there.
Got it. Brother Mshinda, what are your thoughts, on this? What did these things look like for you, as a young man in latter 60s, early 70s, mid 70s? What did this stuff look like for you, and from wherever you grew up at?
All right, brother. Well, I was blessed to be able to grow up in a family, alluding to what Brother Jones is talking about, as far as, how we've lost our understanding as a people, as generations have matriculated and changed over, and that relationship with history, not being able to identify, uh, with historical events, important things that spell out and make you have an understanding of kind of what's going on today, what has transpired over time, which is important. Of course, there's a movement uh, to, hey, let's quell, the delivery of important information that might empower people such as us, such as our generations, So me coming up, of course, I was alive in the 60s and not in the 50s, but I was alive in the 60s. And I was blessed to be able to, I had a father, and a mother, but the father that, that submerged us into what was going on at the time, at the early age, of course, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, so forth, he being part of many movements and civil rights and things like that, director of Malcolm X Foundation in, LA back in the day. So I was, so me growing up, just a natural, it was a natural delivery to me to where, what made me who I am today and what I'm doing today, So I'm in agreement with, the generations as far as, I mean, the further, we go in time, it's like, wow, there's a disconnection. There's a gross disconnection there. And so I like to think that although I was alive in the 60s, I have the ability to communicate with the current, just because of my submergence in my, from working in criminal justice to working in education over the last 3 or 4 decades, that I've allowed to speak the language and keep up with the lingo and keep up with, ways to communicate with our current generations to a certain degree. Um, but I think that my upbringing during those times, like I say, made me who I am today. And not bragging or anything, because I always tell people if I was a bragger, I'd probably be a retired professional athlete, but I didn't boast myself in athletics, although I was really great at it. I think Brother Rashaki can attest to certain things. But at the end of the day, um, I was, while we were when I was listening to the conversation, I don't know. I just kind of drew down on a book. I just grabbed a book that uh, The Jewish Onslaught by the late Trinidadian brother, Dr. Tony Martin. And, he being inside Wellesley College trying to explain the Jewish involvement in the slave trade and how, and he got in trouble for that, and, you know, I met him and, he was in a speaking engagement and was actually talking about it. This was back in '94 and he signed my book and I'm glad that he did because, the point I'm making is that, you know, uh, the scholars and the people that we experienced in the '60s, '70s, '80s, even now, I'm saying, but even back then, it's, uh, the people that we're dealing with, the generations seem to be more opportunistic and more selfish in their endeavors. It's more like they're not concerned. A lot of folks are not concerned about, the struggle. They're not concerned about what's really going on, or don't even have a grasp on what's really going on. Social media, introduced in the early 2000s or what have you. The internet was introduced as we know it in the mid 90s, and it's become weaponized so much that it distorts the minds of the average person coming up. That's their uh, encyclopedia. That's their research. That listening to a talking head that may or may not know what the hell they're talking about, and and not using the their spirit to discern the truth out of whatever they're, they don't understand that. It's more on the surface, more of a surface level where they're bringing in their understanding, and therefore it's not complete, or it might, like I say, it might be a gross exaggeration or totally incorrect, and they won't know the difference. And so people like me, people like on this call, who try to, sort it all out and try to, teach the addition and the subtraction and the multiplication of life, in terms of, using a math analogy, the very foundational uh, points to give them to understand, giving them a foundational understanding of what this is all about, So what Trump is doing, what was happening before Trump, and so forth, it's kind of like everybody can have an opinion, but do you really know what's going on? Do you it's do you really understand what's really going on? You know, and not to slide off, I'll give you a case in point. I'm talking to a coworker today. They don't even know how many years they've been working for the state or the company they've been working for. They say, "Oh, I have 16 years. And when are you going to retire?" "I have 16 years in." You know, so what do you mean you have 16 years in? You've been working here longer than me. You have at least 20 something years or 30 or whatever. Well, I work part time. Okay, so my whole point, I'm using that as an analogy or as an example of not knowing where you at, knowing what's going on with yourself, So after I had her log in to the retirement website, and she realized she had 5 more years than she thought. And it was just based on some information that she thought she only had 16 years in because she worked part-time. So again, as an example of, like I said, not to get off track, but using it as an example and tying it back into where we are mentally. And of course, you know, uh, Dr. Charles, that's your area, but where we are in terms of our mental state and how we, take in information, how we don't have the patience to even listen to what's really going on. So at the end of the day, um, what I conclude, like I say, even colleagues and people that are coming into the field of education, which is a very important area, and even criminal justice, a very important area, I think, because a lot of our people are intertwined in that, and the people that it's more the potential leaders that we can have. I mean, I only can work so long, so I'm still carrying the banner. I'm still standing up, but the ones that's coming after me, who I actually try to school, I'm in competition with other entities, social media, whatever, just their, peer groups influencing each other, whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, they're more opportunistic, a promotion, a raise, work, trying to, get ahead in life more so, kind of like I think Dr. Jones was, Professor Jones was talking about, you know, our public officials, they're not getting in there from a civil rights point of view, or coming in there, as a freedom fighter, or whatever name you want to use. It's more or less, it's kind of like another talking head, just enough to get by, politician style, and that type of thing. So anyway, you know, I'm in agreement with what I've been hearing and what I've been listening to, and I just wanted to share that aspect where, um, but again, like Professor Ross say, hey, there's a lot of positive things going on. My cup is half full, and I'm gonna continue to do what I got to do to try to enlighten and to try to bring common sense to these causes, to this understanding. But man, it is a tough battle because we have lot of negative forces that we competing with, and therefore, and again, talking to our counterparts or our white brothers and sisters, you know, the ones that's so-called Christians and they're supposed to be good people. They're not dialoguing about this. Well, about what's going on with our government. They're not having that conversation. It's beyond belief almost that they'll talk about everything else. They're vocal about everything else. But what's happening with this current administration and what's happening? So they're complicit. They're complicit, and you know, because of they've been holding the structure, the power structure, you know, they've been holding the power in the structure. You know, like they say, the white man has been treacherous. You know, and therefore, I would like to say today I had a conversation with a white dude that was born in the '60s, and he was actually, you know, I kind of reversed some, I did like a little reverse psychology on him in a sense. And I was talking about how all of a sudden they want to talk about DEI, you know. I said, well, they had affirmative action. They have all kind of names. All we want, you know, if we're going to all live in America, if we're going to all be taxpayers and all that, we just want our fair share. We want to access the opportunity, you know, in the contracts with the federal government or whatever. You know, you can't discriminate against people, you know, that kind of thing. And then he got on the kick and he was talking about, yeah, what about how they did the Native American and how they went over Vietnam? It's like for the first time, this guy out of his mind and out of his heart, he's acknowledging that, yeah, we some dirty ass people. You know, we just, or my people has did some dirty stuff, you know, instead of, you know, trying to hide it or try to, you know, try to, you know, make like it never happened. He spoke on that, but I kind of, you know, set him up with that. But at the end of the day, provoking this, a discussion with the white counterparts, you know, say, hey, what's wrong with y'all? You know, do you know what's wrong with y'all? But is y'all really sick? You know, these are my conversations. I'm in the day-to-day battle. I'm still three years out of retirement, so I'm I'm vocal as I ever been. Not that I was saying, oh, I'm gonna wait till I'm, so many years I'm gonna keep quiet. I've never been quiet, but I've been blessed to be able to be an independent contractor within my own to do what I got and know how to communicate with whether they're the enemy or not. I know who they are, so I'm not gonna engage with the dumb stuff, I'm gonna get to my point and what I'm trying to accomplish. And so, but I learned that, over my lifetime. And so all in all, I'm just saying that I'm just kind of freestyling and giving my, uh my experience, and I hope it makes a little sense.
Well, thank you, brother. Brother Ahi, how did you experience this coming up? And are you from Detroit?
Born and raised, brother, on the west side, almost southwest in the Livernois retirement area, among other places, but mostly on the west side of Detroit. You brothers speak so beautifully and able to get your points across, and it's so fluid. And mine is kind of choppy, so if you can just bear with me. Brother Jones, something you said just stuck with me, and it has nothing to do with well, it has everything to do with tonight, but it's a prior podcast. I heard you say that we aren't angry. We aren't angry enough. And why aren't we angry enough? Probably because of our ignorance. Our ignorance is bliss. The more you know, the more you acknowledge, the more you have to take on. And when I was growing up here on the west side in Detroit, I had a community, strong nuclear family. Father worked in Parks and Recreation, worked his way up to a district supervisor on a job that was denied him until Comey Young got into office and opened, and he didn't have any numbers. He just opened the door. He said, if you qualified, you get in. And so a number of my relatives were able to get into municipal jobs, state jobs, which even today is the primary employer of our people, which is probably why Trump, one of the reasons Trump, one of the variables in the equation of why he is attacking government municipality, and you really see it in LA County. I was looking when they had the DA come in, that we had the DA come in, and I was looking up some information. There's only 800,000 Black people in the county, but they are paying a big price for being in that county, from being victims of homicide, homeless, employment. As I forestated, the government, the municipality are the biggest employers of them, because the private industry don't have anything to do with them. And I'm from a similar situation here in Detroit. Of course, we're in a Black community in Detroit. We're 70–80% in Detroit Black. And outside in the Detroit metropolitan area, it's just the flip. It's 80% white. So we're really divided that way. We're concentrated that way. But what I was saying was, as a child growing up, I was born in '59. So the '60s were a really important part of my development. And I had neighbors, we had a community, the children walked to school together. The neighbors, the parents got a chance to know each other through the children, through the children knowing each other and being in the same classes and running in and out of each other's houses. We had a community. My mother was invested and a leader in the community. We gave away lunches, free lunches on our porch. We organized, she organized, helped organize, it was a pillar, but one of the starters of our block club, which led to the other block clubs in the area, which led to a community organization, direct interaction with our public officials and the police department, even organizing a neighborhood watch where the gentleman actually rode around with the guns in the car. This was in the late, going into the late 70s, the mid 70s to the late 70s, right prior to the crack epidemic. My father, I saw him interact with his people, from the babies to the adults. He empowered them. He set up programs to push some of these kids through the education program and give them allow them opportunity once they got post high school. I was in the middle of it. I'm a walking distance to Temple #1, a Nation of Islam, where Malcolm spoke, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's Temple #1 in Detroit. I'm a walking distance of it. Shrine of the Black Madonna, the same thing with Reverend Clegg. We had the Black Slate. We were empowered. Our educational system, I was fortunate enough to have mostly Black teachers, and the white ones that were mixed in were held accountable. They did their job. Every school in the city of Detroit graduated every type of professional and tradesman that you wanted. That was the issue, and we controlled most of the curriculum. So we were basically ready. We knew we're adequate in reading and writing, informing opinions. We had the foundation. We had the information from our history: Mary McLeod Bethune, Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass. As elementary school students, we knew who they were and what type of contributions they made to our people. Somehow that has been dismantled. I wonder why. Now Students are dropped off in front of school. We don't walk together. They don't walk together. Now you'd be lucky if you knew your neighbor. It's more or less a greeting, hi and bye. There's no, we're not engaged. And in some of our cases, we're glad that just you do you and I'm gonna do me. We've changed from us to me. We don't know what we want. It's an individual wealth kind of thing now. You see, I think Professor Rahh was saying we have individuals who have wealth, and we see them. And so quite naturally, we all feel like it's accessible to all of us. If I can do it, you can do it. YouTube. Children don't want to work and get their hands dirty. They want to do YouTube. They want to do TikTok. They want an easy way through it to get rich. And they feel like they can do it by themselves. And it all comes from the educational system, not being taught how to be critical thinkers, not being able to look at what's in front of you and dissect it and get the information and look and see what you're confronted with. Because a lot of these people never thought that Trump could get back in office. But they didn't look at the numbers. They didn't use common sense. He still had 76 million people behind him. And he still had this perception idea where they don't care about the facts. They just care about their own agenda. And their perception becomes their primary motivator. And facts don't seem to count. I want to know from my brothers tonight, what do we want? What happened to free the land? What happened to do for self? How do we get to, I just want a piece of the pie? Do we really see ourselves as a part of this society? Or should we be thinking about us and what we're going to do to create for ourselves what we need to progress in this life?
I'll take the first stab, my brother, at your question. First of all, I had the great good fortune and pleasure and honor to live in Detroit from the spring of '93 to the spring of 1997. And I think Detroit is the greatest city to be Black in America, okay? And the people who really appreciate what Detroit is are Black people who are not from there. You know, I felt like a runaway slave. I felt this was how enslaved people who ran away and got to Canada must feel like. This was it was Coben Young's last year, and then Dennis Archer became the mayor. So I have nothing but it was transformational as far as I was concerned for me. But to your point, the answer to your question for me is what has happened to us is we've become them. Okay, we have allowed ourselves to be Americanized. One of the things that we've always had going for us historically is they didn't want us, so we never got polluted either. Okay, we had to struggle and stuff, but I think it allowed us to create and define who we were to each other and create community inside of, despite all of the oppression and the discrimination, etc. We became the community that you described because I grew up in the same kind of way you're talking about. I got a few years on you, but in that era, that's who we were. And that's who we always were to each other. And Dr. King made a statement, had a conversation with Harry Belafonte not too long before he was murdered. And he said, I wonder if we made a mistake, and have we integrated, or are we running into a burning house? And that America has no moral capacity, and there's basically nothing there. So somewhere along the way, I'll use this phrase, or I'll borrow something to say what I think has happened to us. And we sing this song all the time, but we never listen to it. And the phrase, the verses are, lest our heart stray from the places, lest our feet stray from the places I guide where we met thee. Lest our heart drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. That's what's happened to us, for me. If I were going to say, at some kind of spiritual or existential level, what happened to us, that's what's happened to us. And as long as our ambition, because I think our ambition historically was to be able to live free, whatever that meant to us. And now our ambition, now I'll be 76 years old next month. No way in hell I would have came up with the phrase diversity, inclusion, and equity. I don't want to be included, and I don't want any equity in a bankrupt proposition, because that's what I think of America. So they can keep all that shit. But the idea that we now, in large numbers, if not overwhelming numbers, we want to be that. You could almost say that's when they won the struggle, because we gave up. And, now I got no empirical basis for saying that, but, if I had to come up with an answer to that extraordinary question you asked, and the predicates you established before, I think that's what happened to us. And something Charles has said earlier, we got to fix us. And if in some ways, as crazy as this is going to sound, Trump may be a blessing, because we're going to have to get our ass together. We're going to have to get our act together if we're going to make it out of here. We will not be able to continue to do what we've done for the last 30, 40 years and survive this. And if we don't get our act together, we might not deserve to survive.
So there we have that aspect of it. Mike Jones, I got a couple of more questions for you as we wind down. So you laid out the profound impact that Congressman Clay had on you, but you've also mentioned several Black mayors from other places, right? So,
right.
So you referenced Atlanta, you referenced Detroit. So how, so you told us about how you were impacted. How were you able to impact, local and statewide politics in St. Louis, and what was going on that you was interacting, with the Maynard Jacksons of the world, or the Coleman Youngs of the world, or the Dennis Archers of the world? Like, so what was going on in your political life, in your political profession?
Charles, when I kind of officially retired from my last public thing with State Board of Education because I was already retired from county government. I kind of wrote a piece, and it was based on what naval tradition, when a captain leaves a ship for the last time, when he's retiring or somebody else is taking over, you ask for permission to go ashore. And I kind of framed the piece in American that way, permission to go ashore. And in that, when that happens, you kind of give a listing of your record. And for me, politics is a team sport. And you and Larry both know I'm a ball junkie. And I don't know what kind of personal impact you do. You show up every day and you leave it all out there. And if I could have been the ball player I wanted to be, if you would have asked me what my goal would have been, it would have been not to be a great player or be the best player, but I would want to be a good player on a great team. And, you have experiences, and ultimately, other folks have to judge what they thought your impact was. But only thing you can judge is, did I prepare appropriately, and did I come to play? And I forgot who said it earlier. Oh yeah, Ali, he said it about being mad enough, and did I have enough dog in me? Okay, and I never thought I played up to the standard I was held myself to, but at the end of the day, I'm satisfied that I kind of left it all out there. Okay, and then somebody else has to say what impact. Because one of the things I found as you get older, you put in the work and you don't know who you're impacting when you do it. Okay, and you may have made a difference in some place that you weren't even trying. So I don't know, and I'm kind of I don't have that level of vanity to try to define that. I got enough
Can I
ego.
tweak the question a bit then? Can I tweak I said, so then can I tweak the question a bit?
Okay.
And so that would be, again, given these spaces that you were in, what was it that you were bringing to the table that caused you to be invited?
If every time I show up, I'm only playing for one thing, first place. And I come to win. I wouldn't give a damn what it is. I want to win. I took over. I left the Board of Aldermen to run the St. Louis Housing Authority back in '85. And the day I walked in the door, I set one goal. I said, in 3 years, we're going to be the best run housing authority in America. And I don't know if we were, but in 3 years, we were amongst them. Okay. So that's the way I approach it. That to stay with my basketball metaphor, I'm only playing. The only reason I'm playing is I want to win the championship. And if you're playing with me, you're gonna win it. You got to want to win the championship too. And here's what I found: most people don't want to not be great or good or excel at it. They just need somebody to tell them that's what we came here to do. And as a leader, or manager, administrator, I only ask for two things from folks. show up every day and give me your best effort. If you do those two things, I can't ask you for no more than that as a player. It's my job then to figure out how to win with the coach, with the players I got, not wish about the players I had. And if we play up to our maximum ability, then we gonna live with the score. Okay, the only two things in life is, just basketball. I used to tell my sons basketball and life are just alike, because there's only two things that you're going to be in charge of: your preparation and your effort. You live with the score, but if you come prepared and you live it all out there, you'll be okay with the score. That's why, you know. And the other thing, I approach it when people say, "Well, we got this problem, that problem," and say, "What you gonna do?" My core position is, as long as we got clock, we keep playing. Because you make somebody beat you, the only way you lose is you stop playing. So as long as you come every day and say, you're gonna have to whoop my ass today. Because if you ain't prepared to do that, you're not gonna beat me. Because I'm not gonna quit.
So I think I'm hearing vision, leadership, team building, and teamwork.
Yeah, and you also tell your team, if you're a good coach, if we win, you all get the credit. If we don't win, I'm gonna take the hit.
Accountability.
Because it's my job to put you in a position to be successful.
Accountability. Okay, so that answers that. All right, so here's my last, maybe one or two questions. They're combined. I know you've already noted, you just noted in this last piece, you know, you gave those who don't know that you're passionate about basketball. And given the context of the conversation, people should know that you're also passionate about politics. Now, if they listen to our show, then they probably also know that you're passionate about jazz. And so my last question is about the Black Arts Movement. And like, what did that look like? What did that look like in St. Louis when, you know, as you were, you know, coming of age, and you know, and as you look back on it, you know, what was that like?
Oh, St. Louis had an incredible Black Arts movement because still in the late 60s, St. Louis is a major city. And both theater and to this day, St. Louis has the oldest Black repertory theater in the country. And that's ongoing. And what is it, Larry? The Black rep is what, in his 43rd year or something like that?
Something along that line. They've been around.
Yeah, but I'll tell you the level of the Black Arts production quality standing. 3 of the founding members of the World Saxophone Quartet are from St. Louis. So Julius Hemphill, Hammett Blewett, and who's the other tenor player? Larry, help me out here. David Murray is the only one not from St. Louis of the founding members of the group. But it was literally, and they were all there together, and they all came out of something called BAG, and that was called the Black Artist Group. So there was a high level, not only intense, but high level, high performing quality. So it was there, and it was real in the 60s.
And so, do you think
Oliver Lake, okay, came to me.
is a okay? And do you think the Black Arts movement was a continuation of the rich cultural history of St. Louis? So like when we're talking about, you know, the blues and the jazz, you know, literature and theater, or do you think it was separate and distinct?
I think it was both. I think obviously it grows out of what came before. I mean, that's like ain't no Charlie Parker without Louis Armstrong, okay? But they don't play nothing alike, okay? And their approach to the music was totally different. But Armstrong is foundational for Bird to even be possible. So, yeah, they're part of that tradition. But they took the Black Arts thing took a whole different turn, because in that time, we had put a political edge on everything. So it wasn't literally just art for art's sake. It was, the art was supposed to do something too. Because inside of thinking about it, that art culture is also about shaping who people are, how they think of themselves. So there is no neutral art. Okay, everything is about something. Okay, whether it's the novel you write and the essay you write and the music you're playing, it's all about it's all a part of how you understand the world, how you think you should be in the world. And so you're making a statement. If you're not making a statement, you're just entertaining people. And that's the difference between being an entertainer and an artist. If you're an entertainer, you're playing for the audience. What you want to do is sell tickets and you want people to go away happy. When you're an artist, you're producing a statement for yourself. Now, everybody who's an artist wants an audience, but fundamentally, you're not going to change what you do to make an audience like it. And I can say that because that's the way I write my columns. You know, that the column speaks for itself after I write it. And I'm kind of like Miles. If you don't like it, don't read it. Okay, Miles used to say, if you don't like what he was playing, don't listen to it. Okay, because it wasn't for you, it was for me, it was from me, and it's out there now, and you get a chance to react to it, take away what you want to take from it. If you want to add something to it for yourself, you're free to do that. So I think the arts take up a whole different space than what and there are entertainers that dip their toe in the arts. Cowboy Carter is an artistic statement, a cultural statement. But Beyonce is an entertainer. She's in the space as an entertainer. And then there are other people who are in the space as an artist who people also enjoy and find entertaining. So, but in this case, the Black arts was the whole Black arts movement in St. Louis, and I think every place else, was a function of building on that foundation. Call it the idea of the Harlem Renaissance, and then taking that up another level for more direct political impact. And because all of these brothers was bringing some politics to whatever the work happened to be in that moment.
Thank you, sir. And do you have any last just comments and parting for the people?
Oh man, I'm grateful to be participating with you, brothers, and have moments like these. Rashaki, I'm glad you do this, and I consider this kind of our art. Okay, we make this statement, we put this out here, and it speaks for itself after it's out here, and then the public, the viewers, the readers, whatever, you're free to react to it. Now it's between not me and you or us and them. It's between this thing we just did and them. Now, what do you want to do with that? Okay, it ain't ours no more. It's theirs to do with whatever they choose.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was gonna come with that. I wasn't gonna say it exactly like that, but I was gonna say that. So now I don't have to say it. Keep going, brother.
Well, then I'm done then, okay?
Well, thank you very much, Mike Jones. You delivered as you always do. And before I hand this back over to Attorney Fields, my final comment is that we heard from Mike Jones that there is a disconnect and kind of a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding about what it is we have experienced and kind of the nature of our relative progression. We heard similar from Baba Rahh. And then when we opened it up, Mshinda shared the same thing, Brother Rahh shared the same thing. And I want to borrow or paraphrase, our recent ancestor. Some of you may not know that at the beginning of the month, we lost Dr. Neely Fuller. And to really kind of contextualize that piece that each of those brothers kind of brought to the fore, and that is, if you don't understand white supremacy, everything else will confuse you. And so with that, we'd like to thank you all again for joining us, and I would like to turn it over to Attorney Fields.
Well, having said what you all have said, there's nothing else that needs to be said. So I will gladly hand it over to Brother Rahh at this point. And, after, first of all, thanking you all for having us and facilitating this incredible evening of education. And it was certainly a pedagogical situation where I think we've all learned from one another. But having said that, we, Level Set can't thank you enough for inviting us and our continued collaboration. Brother Rahh, please, take us out.
You guys are exceptional, in my opinion, and of course, the panelists that show up every week, Professor Rahh, Brother Rahh, and Brother Mshinda, also exceptional, in my opinion. These are my opinions, and the Brother Mike Jones just took the words right out of my mouth. We do this, we share expertise. That's the goal. We share our expertise the way we want to share it amongst each other. And then the folks who come and check it out, I think, with all of my rationale, I think that what we're doing is beneficial if they would take out the time to just listen. Do something other than what you've been doing. Come by and check us out. The Level Set, the CEN show, Conscious Corner. We have our podcast series of Message to the Black Diaspora. Now we have reggae added to that. We have Roots Reggae Reasoning Sessions. That's another podcast series. I mean, it's information that I think is valuable. And that's what I want to add to this. The value system. What are we valuing here? As people in this, spread it out here in this United Snakes of America. What do you value? I flashed up on the screen, why do you chase the devil? And if you check that out, you'll know what I'm talking about. Why are you trying to be like them when they are doing everything in their power to put you in a position of total subjugation or trying to eliminate you? Why would you want to be like something like that? And that's what that poem was talking about. Why you want to be like that devil? Because there's no other description for it. So, man, this is beautiful, man. You guys make my day, my evening, and it's just a wonderful thing. And I appreciate your time. I really do. And I can't think of nothing else that I should be doing other than help spread this word. And next week, we have a show with Brother Muko, and just what Dr. Charles left off with, we are honoring the works of Neely Fuller Jr. And I hope you guys are able to come show up if you can. But we got Brother Muko and Mr. Bobby, the co-host of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Neely Fuller to the end of his tenure here. Mr. Bobby's supposed to be there too. So if you guys just show up, and we're gonna honor the works of Neely Fuller. He doesn't want to be recognized as this great personality. We're just gonna honor the works. We're gonna follow his request. It's not about Neely Fuller, it's about the work. And that's what you brothers are doing. You're doing the work. And people, they don't know what gem they have in people like you guys, man. So I appreciate you. I'm gonna go ahead and take the pause. Each one teach one in Conscious Corner. Continue to have a great existence, brothers.
Thank you, brother.